Make a joyous noise, let it set you free. Shout it through the air, shout it from the trees. Shout it from the mountain tops to the open sea. Shout it from the rooftops, shout it on your knees. Ah oh 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 oh, ah oh 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 oh, ah oh 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 oh, ah oh 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 oh. Make a joyous noise, free from pain and sorrow. Shout it without care, today's your new tomorrow. Shout it from your heart, shout it on the train, shout it in your car, shout it in the rain. Ah oh 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 oh, ah oh 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 oh, ah oh 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 oh, ah oh 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 oh.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are here because we want to be and because we don't want to be. When we come to remember a life, any life, it is with such mixed feelings, of course. But when we come to remember a life with such grandeur as Len Felton's, the feelings just magnify. I stood in this very spot on May 21st of 2017, and that was for the memorial service for Len's dear friend, Steve Henderson. On that day, Len was a eulogist, and I had the opportunity to not only meet him, but to experience him as a friend, and frankly, as a very awesome speaker. And in that brief span of time, I was caught by what it means to engage in another person's life the way these two gentlemen had. And that was quite an inspiration. Having no idea that I would return in this capacity, less than a year and a half later, I found myself reflecting on all of that. My name is Becky Sansbury. I'm a chaplain to the community and for many years was chaplain for the hospice that serves here in Wake County. And in that time, have stood and sat and been present with many families. But I can truly tell you the experience of being with Len and with this family rivals any other that has been my privilege. And yes, please go ahead and chuckle, because it does include all of it, the laughter and the tears. And as you look around this room and peek around the corners to the extension room and down the hallway where friends spill out to crowd in every space, you will look around and also see a wide variety of not only individuals and ages and styles, but you'll see different colors of clothing as well. I can honestly tell you that this is the very first time in, well, we'll just say many years of ministry, that I have conducted a funeral wearing a canary yellow suit. As we were planning this service for today, one of the things that was truly noted by Mary Ann and by this family is that we bring to this time such a range of emotions. And we truly bring the somberness of the depth of loss. And we bring with it those neutral, numb kind of feelings that simply portray, I'm here and I haven't put all of these pieces together yet. And we also bring that vibrance. It was one of the only ways that you could truly capture Len's personality and his quest for life. And so we bring the range of who we are and what we're wearing, and what will be shared in this time. One, of course, of the most important things that can be shared are the feelings of deep loss, the feelings of love and respect, and all that the word condolences mean to Mary Ann, better known as E-Mama, to Jay, and Jody and Mark, and Brian and Dawn, Michelle and Jonathan, Melissa and Sam, Hannah, Reeves, Gage, to Lou, Carolyn, and Jeanette, and all of the family that surrounds them and the generations and those branches and leaves of the family tree that I see have to extend beyond any blood or marital relationships, because surely any life that Lynn touched became family. Today, as we try to capture a smidge of this range of life that he encompassed, we are following a plan. Now, most services have plans, but this one is a bit unique because part of this was pre-programmed by Len himself. Because of that, where normally we might include opportunities to share remembrances from the greater group as a part of the service, we quickly realized we couldn't follow Len's plan and offer that opportunity in this room. So here's what's going to happen. There are going to be folks who represent different parts of Len's life and his work experience and his family, of course. And then there's going to be a glorious reception down the hall when this service is over. And there's no time limit on how often and how much you can tell stories in that reception, or how many you can tell. In fact, there's not even going to be an audience saying, was that appropriate for a funeral or not? Because after all, it's Len. That being said, it will be my privilege to introduce to you folks who do represent these vastly important parts of Len's life. Or perhaps I should say Leonard, in respect to his sisters and his family of origin, because if I understand correctly, he didn't become Len until he got out into the workforce. In the midst of everything, we know that whether we are scuba diving among frightening sea creatures, or flying a plane, or zooming off on an oversized motorcycle, perhaps even as part of our honeymoon, we know that in all things, who we are is what really follows us throughout our lives. This morning, I had the privilege of attending a bar mitzvah. And in that service, I listened to an erudite rabbi share with a wide-eyed 13-year-old boy as he makes that transition from child to young man in the eyes of his faith. And what the rabbi shared with him were qualities that he hoped would become a part of this young man's life. His wonder for life and learning, his capacity to share with others while developing his own person, his ability to appreciate the quietness of nature and yet the grand adventure of life, and to, when the time comes, take great pride in his work without it interfering with what is his true life. And as I listened to his wisdom, I realized, you're talking about my service ahead of time. For indeed, as I have listened to the stories and will learn even more today, I think that sums up at least a bit of Len Felton. So at this time, it is my privilege to introduce to you Larry Eldridge, who will bring memories from childhood and I'm sure a bit beyond. Larry.
Now I know that Lynn planned this because he's the one who put me here, I'm sure. Mary Ann called me a while back and said, would you like to speak at the celebration? I said, well, no, I really don't think I can do that. She said, well, could you write something maybe and somebody could read it? I said, yeah, well, I can do that probably. So I started, and I got along pretty well, but just didn't seem to be coming. And an old friend said, you know, sometime these things between friends need to be kept secret. So I said, you know, that's right. I can live with that. So, no, when you talk about Lynn, you know, he's a special guy, everybody knows that. But you know what? If you take a guy who is convinced that getting married on April Fool's Day and being able to convince his wife to do it, you see, that's a different kind of guy. Everybody couldn't do that. But I met Lynn in 1953, Mrs. Kirby's 7th grade class, Bayview Elementary School, Norfolk. And we found out we only lived about a block from each other, so naturally we fell in and did normal kid things. The lucky part was we lived near a beach. It was about 2 blocks away. And although it was called Ocean View, it really wasn't an ocean, it was Chesapeake Bay. But it was real close to the ocean. But it was salty, that's what mattered. So we acquired all of our tastes for things salty and things that floated and 2-piece bathing suits down at that beach. And Lord, that boy loved a boat. His anything that floated, he was for. And of course, he got it honest. His dad was the same way. And I never will forget Mr. Felton acting like we were helping when he was restoring an old Chris Craft runabout in the driveway of his home on Sturgis Street. And we went on from there, and you know, it's childhood stuff is everybody's childhood stuff, and so it was a great time to be friends, and a great place to be friends, and a great place to grow up. And Felton, I always call him Felton. It was everybody in those days called everybody by their last name for some reason, and the only one that still calls me Lawrence is Jeanette. But I got used to Lynn after a while. After we met again, I met him again. Well, we got 1960 was an important year. We both got married, and we both had children. His Jay, and my Betsy. And we both agreed much later that it was way too young, but you know, we did it, so it worked out. We each had 3 kids. And life just kind of drug us apart, and didn't see him for quite a few years. And I ran into him at a lunch place in Triangle Park. I was working on a construction job there, and he was still toiling in the mines of IBM data. So we kind of got back together a little bit, but we didn't really get together good until we both married women that we probably didn't deserve. But we became, and they became friends. So that was good. Then we moved down to the beach into the life that you all know, and we moved in with, and we're welcomed into a very great bunch of people down there, a great group, and we did that for years. And I know that's not a whole lot about his youth, but you probably don't want to know that anyway. He was a kid just like all kids. I tell you what, you know what? The thing that I will always remember about Lynn was, I ain't gonna tell you that yet. No, when I got back with him, I realized how smart he was, but how wise he was. That really kind of threw me, because he was wise. And you know, that's something that's easy to say, but once you see it, you know what it is. And he was wise, and especially with children. His grandchildren tell you that. He worked on them good. And but I'll always remember him. He was an imp. He was always an imp. And we were both imps, and I think that's why we were drawn together, kind of. You've all seen it. When he said something or did something he particularly was proud of himself of, he would just kind of give you that little look out of the side of his eye, and he'd be a little glint in his eye. Actually, I don't know how he did that, but he would just look at it, and he wouldn't smile. He just kind of just about a little quarter of a smile, you know. And so that was Lynn. That'll always be Lynn to me. I can only say that, Lynn, you were and are loved, and I personally believe in life ever after, so I'll just say that we'll meet again someday. As the old hymn said, in the sweet by and by. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much. There's something to be said for those remembrances that are shared and those that are kept private. Thank you so much, Larry. You couldn't know Len and not realize that, as Larry said, he was a really smart guy. Sometimes he wanted you to know that, and sometimes he just figured you'd guess it on your own. One of the individuals who'll be sharing remembrances with us this afternoon came through work channels, and yet has still been a friend for so many years because, well, Len's experience goes back many years. I must admit, before I introduce this gentleman, I was struck by something that was and was not in print in Len's obituary, but to the credit of whomever wrote it, Len himself or the family. We know that he had quite a stellar career with IBM. But what was written in that obituary was about him as a person, and I believe one line in acknowledgement that he had had a magnificent career. Well, this afternoon, we are very fortunate to have speaking with us Bill Brocker, who is a friend from work days and will be sharing his personal recollections. Bill?
I don't know whether I can get through this properly, but I'll try. I won't make the kind of speech that Larry made. He's good at it. I'm not. But it won't be about work either. I met Len through work. I came back from an assignment in Germany in 1971 and went to work on the same project that Len was working on. And he became my first friend in North Carolina. We've had that friendship for 47 years. At the time, Len was driving a little Datsun sports car, and I brought a Mercedes back from Germany. Well, you know Len, he always liked a challenge. So we would race home from work most evenings and see who could get there the fastest. We matured a little since then, but not much. Len and I struck it off quite well right from the beginning. We started going to Carr Lake at the time, and almost every weekend in warm weather. We'd go to Carr Lake and we'd swim and we'd water ski and we'd picnic and we had grand times. At some point, Wen went through a rough patch, and during that time, he joined us for dinner whenever he could. And we'd have dinner and enjoy ourselves. He was having a bit of a hard time for a little while. He'd come to my house at Hatteras, and we'd have parties there. We did that until Len built a house at Emerald Isle. Then he would come to my house sometimes, and we would go to his house sometimes, but we always had a good party. Len kept horses for a while. He invited me to take a ride through Umstead Park. And he gave me a horse to ride that loved to rub its passenger against trees. It was about a week before I could walk good again. He had a wicked sense of humor. Once I talked Len into a hunting trip in Wyoming. Now, Len could do a lot of things better than I could, but I am a real hunter. And we went to Wyoming. The trip wasn't a great trip, but the game wasn't everywhere. But guess who got the big buck? Len. Oh, one day, Len called me actually from about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. He said, "There's a hurricane headed for my house in Emerald Isle, and I've left things not all picked up. Would you come down, Bill, and help me put things away?" So of course I went, and we worked until about 3 o'clock in the morning, getting the house as ready as we could get it for the hurricane. And then we just crashed. We went to bed, and when we got up in the morning, the hurricane had bypassed Emerald Isle and went to Hatteras, where my house is. We went on a whitewater canoe trip with Paul Ferguson. We did that a number of times. Paul, as you probably know, is just the expert on canoes. He's been everywhere, he's done everything, and he knows just exactly what to do with a canoe. Maybe I wasn't anywhere near that good. But in any rate, we went one time on the Haw River, and there's a place on the Haw River called Gabriel's Bend. At Gabriel's Bend, there's a big boulder out in front of out in the middle of the rapid, and it's a pretty good rapid. So Paul went down untouched, of course. Len went down and got wet with, I think, was Brian with him at the time, and but he made it through. He survived all right. I came down and I smacked right into the middle of that boulder, did a somersault with the canoe, and landed up in the water. I lost my glasses, I lost a paddle, I lost everything except a six-pack of beer. When I retired, I bought a house and some land out in Chatham County in Moncure. And Len and Joe Goldstein helped me move. Well, you know, Len just had to drive the moving truck. When he backed out of my driveway in Cary, he knocked over the neighbor's mailbox. When we got to my house, my new house, he backed into the gutter on my garage. Well, the dent is still in the gutter, by the way. He made a lot of good decisions. The first and most important one was he had the good fortune to be able to marry Mary Ann. And he had the good sense to take good care of that marriage. He even became somewhat normal. You got to use that term loosely with Len. One of my more recent memories is Len and I went on a fishing trip to Erie, Pennsylvania. And it's probably one of my best memories. Joe's daughter, Beth, invited us to dinner. She lived there. And we went, and her baby daughter was tired and a little bit cross. Len came in the house, and it wasn't 5-10 minutes. He had that little girl laughing and wanting to eat dinner with us and just having a great time. That was the way Len was. He loved children, and children loved Len. Those are just a few of my memories. I have many more that I could share with you at another time, I suppose. But I want you to know that he was a great friend, and I will always miss him. Thank you.
That beautiful fusion of work and life and family and experiences. Thank you so much, Bill. Now, never let it be said that more recent friendships can't also be meaningful. You might never have an inkling of when they might happen, with whom they might be, where they might occur, or that strange coincidence of distance and yet close familiarity. I'm not going to fill in the blanks on that one. I will let Phyllis Sharp do that because that's her story to tell.
Oh, it is hard. So I am Phyllis Sharp, and I met Len on the back of a bus in Beijing, China, on October 27th, 2009, almost 9 years ago to the day. My husband David and I were on a Raleigh Chamber of Commerce sponsored trip to China, and we had very serendipitously been assigned to the same bus as Len and Mary Ann. That was the beginning of a steadfast friendship and numerous travel escapades over the ensuing years. About 3 weeks ago, after I got back from a trip out of the country, I went to visit Len. And after visiting for a few minutes, he said, "You're going to speak at my service?" I nodded. He said, "I want to hear it." I looked at him and I said, "Len, what does it matter what I say? You're going to be dead." And he laughed that ridiculous little chuckle of his and said, "Good point. When are you going to do it?" I thought to myself, I cannot write this in the past tense and read it to Lynn while he is still here in the present tense. I wanted to be like Heather Land and go, I ain't doing it. But I did it. I wrote it, and I read it to him while I held his hand. He mostly had his eyes closed, but I knew the parts he especially liked because he would squeeze my hand harder and harder. And he didn't recommend any edits. So here are some of my thoughts and memories of the most wonderful guy friend I ever had. As I mentioned, I met him on the back of the bus in Beijing because that's where the party group always was. And Lynn always sat on the very back row so he could survey the bus and so he didn't have to turn around to see what was going on. But prior to that time, I did not know Lynn as a young boy when he thought his name was Dammit Leonard. all one word. Because he said that's how his father had always addressed him. He said it wasn't until he was a little older that he realized Leonard was his name, and the first part was just an expression of intense exasperation. And even though we only lived 10 miles apart for over 30 years, our paths had never crossed before we were in Beijing. So I did not know Lynn during his IBM years, when peers and colleagues described him as brilliant, a renegade, irreverent, raucous, adventurous, a leader, and a pain in the ass. I also did not know Lynn when he became a single parent with 3 children and a demanding job. He told me when that happened, he went to his boss and secretary and said, "Everything has changed starting today. My children are my priority. If they call for me, come and get me no matter what I'm doing." And he said Jody made sure he kept his word on that. I did not know Lynn and Marianne, unfortunately, when they did their own version of Easy Rider, traveling around America on motorcycle through breathtakingly rugged terrain and pitching tent each night. Or when Lynn captained their 42-foot trawler for 6 months as they navigated from Emerald Isle to Key West and explored various ports along the way. Lynn assured me we should all do that at least once. This past decade, though, I have had the pleasure of spending quite a bit of time with Lynn and Marianne. It is a gift when you meet a couple that share similar passions and interests. Lynn clearly had a passion for flying. He had 2 planes, a decathlon stunt plane he co-owned with his buddy Grover, and a DA-40 Diamond aircraft he co-owned with his partners Jan and Dan. He loved logging airtime and talking with his fellow aviators at Wings of Carolina and at the various fly-ins around the country that he went to. He frequently encouraged my husband David as he worked toward his passion to obtain his pilot's license. And Lynn was the first person to go up with David after he got his license. Lynn also had a passion for being near and on the water at his beloved Emerald Isle home. The famous porch parties with Reeves, Hannah, and Brian making music, freshly harvested blue crabs and clams on the table, and the hood in attendance were legendary throughout the year. When we were there, we loved sleeping in the downstairs bedroom where David would turn the hallway thermostat down to 70 after everyone went to bed because Lynn thought it was perfectly fine for it to be almost 80 degrees in the house. We all 4 had a passion for travel, from hikes throughout the United States to homestays in Cuba, having lunch with Hector Carreras at his amazing Finca La Coincidencia, to hiking in the Altiplano northwest of Lake Titicaca in Peru, to fishing for piranhas on a small boat in a tributary in the Amazon with Lynn kicked back like Huck Finn on the Mississippi, to stargazing on kopjes beside our stilted tents in the Serengeti in Tanzania. We had shared truly amazing adventures, and Lynn would always say, "Where are we going next? I can't leave till next Tuesday." No matter where we went, Mary Ann and I were always making sure we were organized and following the rules, while David and Lynn tested boundaries every chance they got. A great example is when we flew to New Orleans in November 226, Papa Alpha, Lynn's Diamond airplane. After arriving, we walked from our Airbnb apartment about a mile to the grocery store. We bought way more than we had expected, so we couldn't carry the 4 bags between us. So Lynn and David said they would just push the groceries in the cart back to the apartment. There was a 6-inch wide yellow line around the entire perimeter of that grocery store parking lot with signs about every 20 feet that said, "Do not take carts beyond this point. Wheel locking device will engage." So of course Mary Ann and I were immediately saying, "No, we can't take the cart." But of course, they pushed it over the line. Nothing happened, so they kept going. Mary Ann and I are just talking. We're walking slower than they are, so they get ahead of us. So we make the left turn onto the street where our apartment was, and ahead of us we see David and Lynn on either side of the cart, carrying it full of groceries because the wheel locking device had engaged. So later that night, we met our neighbor and introduced ourselves, and she said, "Oh, when I saw the stolen cart by the stairwell, I thought they must have rented to a bunch of college kids." Well, we kind of are at heart. Anyway, before we left, David was able to disengage the lock mechanism, and he and Lynn pushed the cart back to the grocery store. For me, there were 2 things that I loved and respected most about Lynn. They defined who he was. And his first was love of family. His beautiful, loving family, which Becky has already named, except for Miss Hayden. His sisters and their families. Lynn's actions consistently demonstrated how much he adored and loved them. His high expectations and how much he loved spending time with them. There have been numerous highly creative ways over the years I have known the family that the children and grandchildren demonstrated love and respect for Lynn. Weddings, graduations, birthdays, and this past year, they rallied with him time and again to support his fight with cancer. If you're friends with Jody on Facebook, I know you've seen the custom silkscreen t-shirts, bathing suits, signs, and props she would assemble with messages of support and family unity. But I don't think family is always blood. It's the people in your life who want you in theirs. And it's the ones who accept you for who you are. We had been great friends with Lynn and Mary Ann for several years. And when Lynn became sick, we all realized we were far more than friends. We were family to each other. This past year, we loved and cared for Lynn every way we could. We were even the parent keepers at his granddaughter Melissa's wedding this past May. As many of you know, Lynn did not care for sappiness or people hovering over him. As he became less physically able, he would get so frustrated with all the blathering going on around him that he told me once he would just tune it out because it all started sounding like blah, blah, blah. So I gave him this button. With the caveat that if he ever used it on Marianne or myself, we would take it away. The second thing that defined Lynn was that he was genuine. There was no BS with Lynn. He was truthful, straightforward, direct, quite frank, naturally positive, considerate, and very intentional. When he cared about you, you knew it. He was an adventurer, a fun seeker, and an avid reader. He had a brilliant mind, undergirded with a fierce curiosity to know more, to constantly test boundaries and assumptions, and to experience the sheer pleasure of discovery. Lynn's approach to life always reminded me of a line from Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. Is not life 1,000 times too short for us to bore ourselves? Recently, I visited Portugal and some of the Azure Islands. I saw flocks of very small swallows perform swooping padishahs above the Douro River. I saw larger, browner swallows flitting between the clay tile roofs of the ancient buildings in Porto and Terceira. I learned that these swallows of all shapes, sizes, and colors are considered a significant part of the Portuguese cultural imagery because they represent love and loyalty. Families welcome them flying over their homes because of what they represent. So I'm thinking, as you go outside today or whenever you leave home, look up. If there's a bird flying by, it could be a Lynn swallow sending you the gift of love and the loyalty of friendship.
No words beyond the poetry of your friendship, Phyllis. As Phyllis so aptly said, you couldn't know Lynn and not know the role that family played, not only in his time, but in the center of his being. So to represent his family, and I realize that is a challenge because each of you have such a strong and deep and loving connection to him. But to speak on behalf of his family, Jody, with the strength and company of her brothers, Brian and Jay, will now share recollections.
Wow. Look at y'all. Warm in my heart by being here with us today. Some of you I can't look at. It's killing me. I do thank you for being here, helping us celebrate the amazing life of Lynn Felton. In case you don't know who I am, I'm Jody Lynn Felton Niswanger, Lynn's only child. Okay. Okay, well, maybe not his only child, but his favorite and only daughter, flanked by his favorite sons. How do we say goodbye today to this incredible dad of ours? Our hero, our life coach, our biggest cheerleader, the president of our fan club, our very best friend. There are just no words big enough to describe this man or the depth of our love for him. He was our everything, and we were his. Life without him will never be the same. We all agree that grief is the price of love. As you know, Dad's excitement and enthusiasm for life was contagious, and he had a love for life like no other. He lived in the fast and the fun lanes. He was an extreme sport kind of guy. Airplanes, boats, scuba diving, motorcycles. He had an adventurous spirit to travel the world and discover all that life had to offer. Dad made everything in our life more fun. All of y'all know, the most fun. He was a contagiously spirited man. Dad was all about his family and making memories together and supporting each other unconditionally. We promise, Dad, to carry on all of your family traditions, even the ones we shouldn't. Oh, Dad, we're going to miss laughing with you, sharing with you, and your perfect advice. Honestly, Dad, we're going to miss every single thing about you. We're going to miss the bigger-than-life man that you are, who always had our backs no matter what. Whatever emotion we were feeling, you validated and felt it equally as strong or stronger. If we were excited about something, you were even more so. We could tell you anything. You believed in us, and we trusted you. Well, a lot of y'all know this part. We had an unconventional upbringing, to say the least. But we wouldn't change, not one bit of it. Dad, you made life perfect, and in our eyes, you are perfect. Throughout life, Dad always made us feel secure. We always knew we were loved dearly and deeply. Dad's legacy will be his 3 kids and his precious grandkids, whom he adores. Michelle, Melissa, Hannah, Reeves, Gage, and Hayden. Jay, Bryan, and I thought we were his most prized and treasured gifts, and we were, until the fabulous 6 came along. Dad loved his grandchildren with every ounce of his being. They were his pride and joy, and through them his life and legacy will carry on. Let's make him proud each and every day by the way we live and the way we love. Dad, you taught us to live life large, to celebrate everything and anything at every opportunity, to love deeply and unconditionally, to be loyal, to be a real friend, to forgive and move on. You taught me, Dad, how to ride a horse. Ride it like you stole it, baby. Bill Brocker knows that story well. He even taught me how to put on makeup. Good Lord. He even used a vacuum cleaner to teach me how to have pigtails. He took me to the barber shop for my first haircut. Thankfully, the Flowbee was not yet invented. You helped Mark and I deliver our first grandchild, Michelle. Your first grandchild, our first child. And your second, Melissa. You mended all of my broken hearts, like only you could do. You celebrated all of my first and every single happy moment in my life. Dad, you always made me feel like the luckiest girl in the world. And having you for a father, I truly am. Dad, I hold you in my heart forever. and it gives my broken heart great comfort knowing you're always with me. I promise to take care of the ones you love the most, your beloved wife, Mary Ann, my awesome brothers, Cry and Baby, your precious grandchildren, Mark and Dawn, and our newest members of our family, Jonathan and Sam. You affectionately refer to us as the Felton 15, and oh, how proud we are to be in this group. Dad, we honor you by maintaining your example of total commitment to family values and promise to pull closer together. I don't even think that's possible, but we'll try. We will make you proud, Dad. Forever, Felton strong. The day we forever dreaded has sadly come, and we know that heaven has gained quite the gift. Dear Lord, we hope you're ready for him. He's quite the handful. But we know you are well aware of that. After all, you did create the very one and only Lynn Felton. Dad, we love you. We adore you, in fact. And we thank you for your unconditional love and support. We will look forward to your heavenly visits when we need them most. Until we meet again, sweet man, we will forever be missing you. From the depths of our broken hearts, thank you all for being here today, loving and honoring our man, celebrating his life with us. A special thanks to you friends who have become family. We are grateful beyond words for the love and support you have provided us. And how will we ever be able to adequately thank Dr. Roy Cromartie, who I understand is here today, our oncologist, who went from neighbor to doctor to friend, and now, Roy, like it or not, family. Is he right back there? Roy, I may make you stand up. I see you. We are beyond grateful to you for your incredible care. You are much loved by the Felton family. So now, in true Felton form, let's all go live large and love big. As you know, Dad would have it no other way. Cheers, sweet Daddy. We will see you on the other side. Felton strong.
Laughter and tears, recollections and hope. Dr. Cromartie has been noted as the leader of Len's medical team. I think he would also quickly add that he was joined by quite a company of those who provided so many types of services to Len during this last time of his illness. Sometimes our role becomes introduced through something like being a doctor or a nurse or the aide to a nurse or some other medical professional. And yet we find that there's another way that we also touch people's lives. Len and Mary Ann and so many others have been soothed and comforted and uplifted by music that you actually heard as you were coming in today. And one of the members of Len's medical team was also his musical and emotional uplift too. And so it is a privilege to officially introduce to you Mr. Eugene Taylor, who will share Amazing Grace.
The family continue to know that being absent from the body, in presence, with the Lord. I'm so grateful to be here.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. I was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, that once 'twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and precious grace be here. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. 'Twas grace that brought us safe thus far. I was, and grace will lead us home, and grace will lead us home. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
The American philosopher and essayist Ralph Waldo Emerson has said that to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social situation, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. There's no doubt that Len Felton succeeded. But with everything that you have heard today, would it not be most appropriate that Len himself should have the final word? I am simply sharing it on his behalf. On the 23rd of September, Len shared these thoughts, and they indeed shall be our closing thoughts. As I told you at the beginning, Len had a plan for the service, and that was that it should not be too long, because when a service is too long, family hurts too much, and friends get bored. And so to bring this portion of our time to a close before the time of reception and fellowship, please hear the words of Len Felton. There are people that are part of your life that imprint on your very being what is most important in this life. They instill family values that get passed on to the next generation. My parents were two of those kind of people. I was blessed to be raised by such wonderful, caring people. In the last year, I have undergone many tests, several rounds of chemo, radiation, and various medications, all designed to treat my brain tumors. All the tests made it appear that the goal was successful. However, that was not the case. Unfortunately, my body has not responded as the doctors had hoped. I can feel my body fading as the days pass. My doctor has told me that in his best estimate, I have days, maybe weeks, but not months to live. My fight is over. I am at peace. I wish to thank my doctors and caregivers whose efforts have been magnificent, especially Dr. Roy Cromartie. My dear friends who have sustained me through these difficult months and have given me a lifetime of memories and support beyond belief. And to my family who has been with me during each and every step of this journey. I have seen and felt those important family values in every generation of my family. As said so beautifully by Charles Krauthammer, I leave this life with no regrets. It was a wonderful life, full and complete with the great loves and endeavors that make it worth living. I am sad to leave, but I leave with the knowledge that I lived the life that I intended. Indeed, if it can ever be said about anyone, James Leonard Felton Jr. lived life his way.
Change has come. Oh, yeah. Change love to do, you're right back in the same place. Come on. Change, a change has come.